Welcome to the Great Girlfriends podcast, where we discuss life, love, laughter, and everything in between. I'm your host, Sybil Amuti, and I can't wait for you to hear all of the Great Girlfriend magic on today's show. So without further ado, grab something great to drink, grab your pen and your paper, and get ready for this week's episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Great Girlfriends. We're going to have an outstanding conversation for you all tonight. We're going to be your guest hosts stepping in. So you may be thinking, who are these new faces? No worries. We'll introduce ourselves to you. I'm Dr. Dolores Tarver. I am a licensed psychologist.
I'm Ebony Young, licensed professional counselor in the state of Georgia, also a nationally certified counselor with a master's in clinical psychology.
Yes, you are. Come on, sis. I am Marylis West. I'm an ordained minister, and I am the greatest girlfriend of all girlfriends.
Yes, that's true.
That
It's
is true. That is true. You
It's
do
true.
want a Reverend Marylis West in your life.
It feels
Yeah,
true.
I would absolutely say that.
Mhm.
So we're excited this time to join you all because we have a topic that stands the test of time. So it does not matter in what season of your life that you're in, you can benefit from this topic. What's the topic, girlfriends?
Boundary.
Boundaries.
Boundaries, yes, the
Boundaries.
dreaded boundaries. The dreaded boundaries. Some of you may be in that season of celebrating boundaries, but wherever you are, we have something for you. So let's go ahead and kick this thing off because I think it's important for us to understand the importance of boundaries. Ebony, you do a really great job of explaining why boundaries are important.
Yes. So I like to tell clients that boundaries are the things that we do or put in place so that people know how to treat us, right? Boundaries are not for other people. They're strictly for us. They remind us of who we are and what we need, and it helps us to advocate for ourselves. So in our boundaries, there are many different types of boundaries. I mean, we could go down the gamut of the list, but primarily to know that if once I set my boundary, and it helps me to help you know how to treat me.
There it is. Give the people guidance because we need some guidance because otherwise people will treat you however they want to treat you.
That's a fact.
And so if you don't tell a person, hey, these are the ways that you treat me, handle me, what's important to me in terms of whatever the nature of this relationship is, whether it's a relationship with your coworkers, it's a relationship at your faith-based institution, it's a relationship with a partner, it's a relationship with a family member, then you want to make sure that they know what is required by you and what your non-negotiables are. So let's get into the relationship dynamics between our family members, our friends, and our romantic partners, because I think those tend to be some of the hardest boundaries to set. Reverend West, talk to the people about that difficulty being able to navigate relationships with people you love and care about.
Well, part of the rough edges around boundaries and people that you love and that love you back is you want to give them what they want. You want them to be happy. You want them to be at peace. And sometimes that comes at the expense of your own boundary, right? Where you will lay those down and let people step across them so they can have peace. But in turn, you may not have peace. And so that's something that I have had to learn and that my girls are learning, and that, you know, we often encourage people to do is a boundary is a boundary in the house and outside of the house, with friends and without friends, right? It's not just for those people that you're trying to keep at bay at work or people that you see on the streets on a regular basis. It's also in the house where sometimes we let our guards down, but we should still have boundaries, right? So we can get comfortable and let our guards down, and I can love you unconditionally and I can care for you, but there's some places that you shouldn't cross. There's some respect that we should have. So respecting one of the things, and here I go with this sleep that siblings don't love. When the girls were little, my girlfriend used to say, you are a respecter of sleep. So there was a boundary around if someone is asleep, if someone's taking a nap, we're going to respect the space that they're in. If they go in their room to take a nap or it's time for them to go down for bed, we're not going to be noisy in the hallway or noisy around their room. And so setting boundaries around their rest and their giving them the freedom to rest and to have that space and not be disrespectful to that. And if we're watching TV, turn it down a little bit and respect their boundary that they're resting, right? If we go out to eat, right? and there's leftovers in the refrigerator. Well, you didn't order that when we went to the restaurant. It is not your, just because it's in the family refrigerator does not mean that you have free reign. There's a boundary around, right? So we set certain types of boundaries that as we grow up and raise children and we even experience ourselves around, there's boundaries around just regular living with people that we love. Oh, I want you to eat the rest of my ribs, but you know what am I gonna eat when I get them? Right.
Right.
So we may split this. So there's way those boundaries exist in the space where we're ebbing and flowing and they're natural. We may not know that they are boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But it's teaching people, like Ebony said, how to treat us, right? I don't want you to disrupt my sleep. I want to wake up and I want my lunch to be there. There's certain things. I want my phone charger to be still plugged into my
Yes.
outlet, right? When I go to charge up my phone. So I'm teaching you how to treat me. And so people will respect that. Oh, you better not go get Ebony, bottled water out of the refrigerator because she's so you teach them, I know these things not to do. I know these things to do and not to do. So in our loving relationships and our friend relationships, we also know we're hanging out with girlfriends. They know which one's gonna valet, which one's gonna do what. Well, we know you don't eat so and so. So they said there's a non-negotiable. I'm not going to this type of place, or I don't want to be around this, or we're doing a group and there's 10 of us. And we know there's friction between 2 or 3. We know not to invite this person if this person is going to be there. We automatically are aware. So that's respecting person A's boundary, girlfriend A's boundary, to say, I can't be in a space with her because of whatever an altercation, and then keep creating a safe space for everybody. So that's respecting other people's boundaries. So we also have the opportunity to do that as well.
I love that you started off with the family boundaries, because I do feel like people, one, we all grow up a little different.
Yeah,
And so I think we make assumptions that whatever boundaries we had in our home, that other people have the same boundaries in their home. And that's not the case. And so, yeah, it might have been a free for all in someone else's house. Whatever was in the refrigerator, whoever got to it first, that's who ate it. That's who drank it. And so being able to establish with people who are coming into your spaces new, like, hey, so my boundary is this, just in case their boundary was a little different. And I do feel like you hit it right on the head. Like, we want people to like us. We want to do things that are pleasing to people that we care about. And so we'll get into that space of accommodating for people. And so meanwhile, I'm over here with my quiet resentment because I'm not really addressing that this thing is bothering me. And so every time we go out together, like, I'm just adding up all of this resentment, and then I'm going to blurt it out over time because I never established the boundary with you in the first place. So I'm hearing, first of all, kids can receive boundaries. We can start them off young, about respecting space and property and self-care. And that also, as new people come into your life, you can share with them the boundaries that you have, because they may not have had the same boundaries. Love that a lot. Ebony, hit on the romantic relationships and the co-worker relationships, because those boundaries can also be a little difficult for people.
Yeah, so we'll start with the easier of the two. I think which would be coworker relationships. I think with coworkers, a lot of times there is a level of professionalism that we assume everyone has, and that we forget that, some people are not just good with recognizing when, as they would say, read the room, right? And when a boundary has been crossed or when it's at risk of being crossed. And so I think a lot of times what we need to do is just kind of our HR person, our DI, all those kind of people would tell us that there's a standard, right? A certain thing, limiting your fraternization at work, speaking to each other with kindness and positive regard, using your de-escalation skills, those type of things with co-workers. And I think one of the things that people will tell you with conflict resolution, particularly in workplaces, is the first thing is not to be a whistleblower. The first thing is, if someone does something that impedes upon your boundaries, let them know. Like you said, we don't want to assume anything about anyone. We want to be able to communicate our needs, our expectations, and allow the person to make a choice, right? So now if I tell you, Susan, please do not remove my stapler. And I arrive on Tuesday and you've again removed my stapler. Now I got to come at you a different way. because the first way I said it wasn't very well received, right? And so we have to be very mindful to kind of have those boundaries and then reinforce them as needed. And then when there are like grand violations of our boundaries, there's probably a rule book, a handbook, a guide of some sort that will tell us protocol of how to resolve those. Now, with a romantic relationship, because we all know it's hard to say no to bae, right? Literally had someone tell me, I don't like having these boundaries. They suck. I'm not in a good place, right? And I can understand that because a lot of times when we love someone, and Marylis said it best, we want them to have what they want. We want them to be happy, and we don't want to run the risk of losing them. And I think boundaries put a great big light on the places where maybe we're used to having people not respect us, right? And so if you're not used to saying no, and then all of a sudden one day you do, that don't just hurt them, that hurts you. You want to kind of recoil and go back and say, okay, well, maybe not completely no. Maybe I could see, maybe if we could do it this way, then no. Sometimes we have to be able to set a boundary, let it work itself out, and give a person an opportunity to respond to that, right? And so, yes, if I've always given you what you wanted, and the moment I say no, it's going to be offensive. You're going to be afflicted. It's going to put some stress in our relationship, but healthy relationships can tolerate conflict, and healthy relationships can get over a no here or there. And healthy relationships with a person who really cares about how you feel, right? Result in the person hearing the boundary and then adhering to the boundary. And so we have to be very careful when we put that out, that we're expecting that some people are not going to like it, and it's going to be uncomfortable for us, particularly if we've not had boundaries in the past.
Ooh. So much to unpack, and that was such good stuff. One, I'm hearing you say you need to know what your policies and procedures are at your place of employment.
Yes, look at the handbook, people. The handbook is there for a reason. Don't just save it to your desktop. Use that. Let it lead you. Let it lead you. Let it lead you.
Because you will be blessed by understanding what your rules and regulations are in your workplace. Sometimes we're violating things because we haven't taken the time to understand what the dynamics are. As you said, Reverend West, before, like, you don't need to be going in the refrigerator and taking somebody else's food because we have policies and procedures around, if you didn't bring it, then you can't take it out of here. Right.
You can't assume that they know that.
And you can't assume that people know that, because maybe where they were before, everything was open. And so if it was out, it was available to everyone. And so I'm hearing that know the policies and procedures, but also if you're in that supervisory or management level role, which a lot of our girlfriends may be, but you're ensuring that you're training your employees so that they're clear about what those rules and regulations are. And if you're trying to figure that out, Equal Employment Opportunity website has a lot of good information about what are federal violations of the law, what are some of the state considerations, and then also just good policies and procedures to ensure that you are diminishing the opportunity for things to occur at work, because we want a safe workspace. So I'm feeling all of that you said. I love that a lot. Because I think sometimes people don't even know what their rights are because they haven't checked.
It supports you, right? Those things are there to support you. They are support. They're resources. And I think a lot of times we miss the opportunity to have the support we need because we don't ask the question. Sometimes you just got to ask the question. If you're not sure and you asking and it don't feel quite true for you, go ahead and ask somebody else.
Take
it higher.
Absolutely.
Go higher.
Absolutely. And if they don't have a policies and procedures, then go ahead and volunteer to help get one in place.
Help them get that together.
Right. Because again, that protects you as well. Then I heard you say with bae, and bae is hard for us. Because when I tell you, we do not like being by ourselves, and a lot of times we have based our identity on our connection to someone else. And so like, if I don't have you, then I feel like I've lost myself. If I'm not, literally some people will introduce themselves as their relationship. I'm so-and-so's wife. I'm so-and-so's girlfriend. I'm this person's partner. And so, like it is literally a part of how they see themselves and upon which they base their worth and their value. So if I don't have this relationship, then that means I don't have worth and value. So it might be much harder for me to set those boundaries because I feel like I have the potential to not be in this position, in this role anymore. And so I'm kind of scared, right? To be able, that's why a lot of people out here, like they talking about they in a situationship and they don't understand what the dynamics of their relationship are because they don't actually want to ask and have conversations about it and set boundaries because like then I might have to actually act on this information.
Correct. I'm gonna have to use them
Correct.
boundaries.
Yeah.
If I say, do you like me? And I want to be married, and you say, well, nah, I really don't believe in marriage. Oh God, it shakes my boundaries up. Now I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Do I stay in this boundaryless or boundless space with you? And accept what you want to do? I reinforce, right, my own boundaries and get what I need from wherever, even if that means that this situationship has to dissolve. That's
Yeah.
tough. That's a tough decision to
That
make.
is a tough place to be
Yeah.
in. Let's
Mhm.
talk a little bit about disillusion of a relationship,
Mhm.
dissolving a relationship. So
Yeah.
once we have gotten to that place where we recognize this relationship is unhealthy, whether it's a romantic
Mhm.
partnership, a work relationship, a family relationship, and
Right.
I set these boundaries and I say, I just recognize that we're not going to be able to be in fellowship at all.
Mhm.
Because when we're in fellowship, it's unhealthy, it's dysfunctional, it's hard for me to stay true to myself. I lose myself in this thing. So I've just decided this is not a good idea.
Mhm.
Why is it so challenging for us to maintain that boundary once we've set it?
Well, I think Ebony hit it on the head, so I'm gonna defer to her about how, and both of you have said it about, we don't want to be alone, right? Or our identity is built on this thing or this relationship or this workplace, right? I've been the CEO of this company, or I've been the accountant at this company, or I've been here since college, and all of the things that are tied into whatever the relationship is, we have formed our identity around that. And so if we lose it, we may not know who we are, and we don't want, may not want to do that work, right?
Yeah.
The people back home know us as X, Y, and Z, and we would have to create a new identity. And so that's hard, but then getting into the conflict, right? So then there's a boundary. So we talked about conflict resolution. There's a boundary that's been crossed and it continues to be crossed. And then the question I asked, well, what are you going to do about that? You know, so I'm gonna complain about it. I'm getting on the phone with my girlfriend and be like, oh girl, let me tell you what happened. What are you now going to do about that? What do you do? Oh, I have to do something. Yes, you set a boundary because you wanted this thing to be respected. It was not respected, or you wanted this out. Now what do you do? Oh, do you change the boundary? Do you move the goalpost? Or do you say, you know what, this is not working for me? And that boundary is there almost as an indicator and a litmus test to see if this relationship is going to work, right? Or if I can be respected in this space, if I can receive the respect that I deserve. And now I realize that I'm not receiving it.
Right.
It's like an indicator. Bling, 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 bling. Okay, now what do I do? And so you tuck yourself in and you say, you get yourself together and you create an exit strategy.
Exit strategy.
Right? At work, a succession plan, right? If you have responsibilities where there's, you know, other people have to come take this on, what is the succession plan? You go to the powers that be and say, hey, I'm gonna have to leave and I don't know how long you're gonna need to transition. It may be 30 days, it may be 2 weeks, it may be 6 months. I'm not sure, depending on the responsibility, but we need to put a succession plan in place because I want to leave respectful. I want to be the person of honor that I have been throughout. And if that's not, if that can't work, it can't work. And then in personal relationships, there may be an exit strategy. There may be, I won't put you out, but you know, where's that person going to be? Homeless, unhoused. Maybe there's a transition where they say, I'll wait till you get yourself together. We'll work toward that thing. Friendships. We're supposed to be going on a cruise. Well, do we pull back from the cruise? Okay, well, let me cancel. Is there a cancellation policy? So figuring out how to navigate where it doesn't harm either person, if that's possible, it's helpful. But just standing up and, you know, now we say standing on business, you just got to stand on it. You know what I mean? Say, this is the boundary I put in place. It's an indicator that I'm not receiving the respect or the love that I deserve. And so now what do I do? Sometimes think about this is if I set a boundary, if this boundary is crossed, when we set the boundary, we may already know what the exit strategy is. Right. I know that, or what, there's a way to remedy, right? So I may say, if I'll go back to the other example, if I get my ribs from the restaurant, right? And I put the box in the refrigerator, I may now put my name on the box because the conversation may be, well, I didn't know it belonged to anybody. Okay, when I'm gonna put my name on the box and stick it on the second shelf, there's a new policy that says anything from the second shelf down is not for grabs, it belongs to people. Anything on the first shelf and above is free for all. And I'm gonna bring some bagels and cream cheese, that's on the first shelf. Second shelf is my ribs, and I do not want you to touch it,
Mhm.
right? And so then sometimes we can adjust to keep, to keep the boundaries, but also to assist people to be able to follow them. If you made it complicated, I don't know what to eat and not eat. How do I know the difference, right? Because Susan brings potluck all the time. She sticks in there. How do I know what's what? So there's also a way to, before we get to the jumping out of the airplane, is to say, you know what, that maybe I can readjust the way I've articulated this boundary, or I'm making it too hard to follow, right? And being able to communicate that in a different way. But then if I come back and my name is on the box and now it's missing, it's up in the air. It's about to be up.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like that you hit on a lot of different levels of why people do struggle with boundaries and maintaining their boundaries. Is one, they never learn how to communicate them effectively.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have these very non-specific, vague, broad, more conceptual than actually realistic, small, manageable goal kind of boundaries that a person is aspiring to, but like they don't actually have a real gauge of whether or not they're meeting that boundary. Like we'll say, well, you just need to do better. What does that
Yeah.
even
What
mean?
does that mean?
Right.
Right. I need you to show up for me. What does that look like?
Yeah.
I need you to listen
And
more.
what
I
does it
need you to
look like
express your
what does it
feelings.
look like for you? Because
Right.
showing up for
Absolutely.
you when I was dating somebody else, or from
Right.
my parents, or at work, looks like something or means something to someone else. Showing up for you, and also depends on love language, may look like something else with different people. So that's
I think
what
it's
we navigate.
I think it's important too, is I think when you were saying, kind of what are the reasons or why people don't, I think a lot of times the reasons why we don't set boundaries in the first place or follow through with our boundaries are from our own places of trauma. I think if you have a fear of abandonment or a fear of rejection, and you think that setting that boundary or reinforcing it will result in the realization of that fear, it's really, really difficult to overcome the hesitation or the trepidation of doing so. And I think we have to sometimes be willing to accept things as they are, not feeling this need to change them, and respecting that when the person does not honor your boundary, they're making the choice about that. And so once you've accepted that they get free will, they get free choice, and they are making a conscious decision not to honor that. So when Marylis puts her ribs in the refrigerator, and I know that second shelf down is not touchable, and I take her ribs and eat them anyway, I made a conscious decision to say that I'm willing to tolerate whatever comes after my violation of this boundary. And so when people say, okay, I hear what you're saying, but I'm unwilling to do that. So I understand you want marriage. I don't believe in marriage. I'm unwilling to reconsider my position. Then you, right, self, and somebody say me self,
Come on, me
me
self.
self has to say, that's okay. I respect their boundary, right, of not believing in marriage and their ability to choose. And I think when we really love somebody, if you ever really love someone, if it's your sister, if it's your kids, if it's your best friend, when you really love people, sometimes you have to allow them to be who they are and do what they do, even if it hurts you. Right. And so me setting this boundary may hurt me, but I'm gonna let you choose for you. And I think that's going back to the element of acceptance, just allowing things to be as they are without the need to change them or work to make them different. Just allowing that. And they're making a choice about it. And so you made your choice and they made theirs, and you don't got to be mad about it. Right? You ain't gotta get no ultimatums. You can
You
just
ain't
say,
got to be
well,
on social media posting about it.
you don't gotta cry about it. You ain't got to do an epitaph and a long
Soliloquy.
dissertation, a
None of that.
soliloquy.
Yeah.
You don't have to do any of that. You can
Yeah.
say, you've made a choice, I've made a choice, and it's okay that we've chosen different things. And I respect you. And I can love you still and miss you greatly and let you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that's that standing on business piece of having to be willing to have the consequence. And I do think like that moving the goalposts, as Reverend West said earlier, and I remember Andrea Kelly talking about this when she was in the Surviving R. Kelly documentary, and she said, it didn't start out this way. It started out as little small violations of things. And I kept moving my goalposts. And I'd say, well, at least it's not this. At least it's not this. And he kept pushing as I kept accommodating. And then eventually we got to the place of it was all of the things I couldn't even imagine myself existing within the space of, because I'd always told myself I will never do that. And here I am doing it. And then now I don't know how not to do it
That's
because
right.
I allowed myself to change that goalpost so many times.
Wow.
And so it is important for us as we're finding, this is your plug for therapy always. If you are having difficulty being able to establish a goalpost in the first place,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you're having difficulty being able to accept, as Ebony said, that they have the right to make a different choice, even if that choice hurts you, you accept that that's their choice and you move on because it's not your choice to be in a relationship with somebody who can't give you what you need.
Absolutely.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And being able to, we have a hard time grieving and letting people go. Like we hoard folks.
Yeah.
And so we just, collecting people. Some of y'all got 5,000 phone numbers in your phone right now. You haven't talked to these people, but once in your whole life. But we always feel like I might need it for something, or I don't make the time to discard and delete and purge people, not saying that they're worthless and they don't have value, but that whatever it was that they were to me at one point, they're not that anymore. And so I can go ahead and release them, and free up some space for some other things in my life. I know we're about out of time, so I do want to hit on Reverend Marylis West, church relationships and boundaries, because I know that we talk a lot about church hurt and people being able to establish boundaries. How do I come back to a church? How do I address if there's something that ends up happening in a church? And then Ebony, I want you to end with how social media can impact our decisions about our boundaries.
Wow.
With our pop psychologists out here on social media.
Yeah.
Sweet.
All right, Reverend West, kick it on out for us.
Okay, well, I will say, the thing about church and church relationships is they are relationships that we do not most times choose individually, right? I didn't meet you and become friends with you. We are in an organization, right, which is the church. Same thing about work. And then we are now in community with each other. So there may be some people that are in this space that I would not normally be in relationship with, right? And so we are learning how to navigate relationship with people and learn and grow and be on board with each other and be in groups and committees and launching events and doing all these things with each other, working together. And we may bump up against people and there may be friction against people and going, wow, why does we think like that? And all of that and they're not normally people we would be in fellowship with. And that's a place for growth in us to say, well, I didn't choose you, but I'm going to love you anyway. But at the same time, we can't cover it. Love does cover a multitude of sins, scriptures say, but at the same time, we can have boundaries there, right? So I can love you and forgive you and do all the work, but I can put a boundary around, I don't need to be in the space with you because you have disrespected my boundaries or you have been disrespectful, and there's boundaries around that. So that may look like, I cannot be on this board, or I can't work on this committee, I can't work on this event with this person because maybe our personalities are too similar, right? And so they're very, very strong. They're a very strong leader, and I'm a strong leader. And if we're both in the room, we're both trying to lead. So I will digress and let them lead this month, and I'll lead next month, right? So we learn to navigate, right? We say, you know what, I'll let you lead because I respect you being the whole self, and you have your own boundaries, and you're not going to back down either for being who you are. We want you to show up as your full self. And I'm going to allow you to do that. At the same time, I'm not going to allow you to run me over or disrespect me or be offensive or harmful in the space. We talk about trauma, things happening just because we're in the house of God or in our faith spaces. It's not a free for all, anything goes, right? We still should have our boundaries. They should come with us. The way we take our education and we take our heart and our love for people into these spaces, we should take our boundaries into these spaces. And if I put my ribs in the church refrigerator,
Right.
Standing on the ribs. The
Standing on the
ribs are
ribs.
not to be eaten, no matter the size.
I don't care where I am, right?
That's
So
right.
the same thing goes. If I open up the refrigerator and you see the rib, whose ribs are these? They do not belong to you. They belong to me. And my
Right.
boundary is you are not to eat them, right? And so I that boundary goes with me, right? So then I do not shape shift.
Right.
Right. And so that's sometimes something that we do. We lay our boundaries down depending on where we are and who we're with. Right. But if I am then again teaching people how to treat me. And so you want to hear people say, don't touch the reels in that box on that refrigerator at the church.
Right.
Those are Marylis's reels. Okay. right? The
Mhm.
boundary, and I'll swing it to you real quickly, something that you mentioned earlier about accountability partners, with people knowing you, and being able to help you stand with your boundary, right? To be able to say, oh, those are Marylis's ribs, you don't want to eat those, or she doesn't like when so and so happens, and so the people around you that are in your sister circle, as we call it, in your friend group that are in community with you. You sharing what your boundaries are, them knowing what your boundaries are, and then they are also there to support you when you're there and not there. And then also when you talk about when it's very, very hard and we have traumas, they're also there to help me. I put this boundary in place to save me and to help me, but I can't always stand on it by myself. And so coming alongside of me to support me to say, sis, you said you would never go through this again. This is a boundary, and I'm going to help you. Don't answer the phone. Let's block them. What do you need me to do to help you? And so I may not be strong enough in myself to keep that boundary and not move the goalpost, right? But a friend or a loved one or someone we've asked to hold us accountable that checks in and says, how's it going, right? How's it going with that boundary, and to go back and forth and say, we might want to tweak some of that. You may want to communicate a little more. You may want to do, though that helps us as well. So even in community, wherever we are at the church as well, having people around us that know something will happen and they'll turn and go, right? And maybe stand up for you in that space, or say, okay, are you ready to go? Or it doesn't change where we are, right? The house of God, work, home, anywhere. The boundaries are the boundaries, and they go with us. They do not get dismantled anywhere.
I love that. So people are going to be out here talking about metaphors of ribs and not touching the ribs in the refrigerator and goalposts. So y'all make sure you're explaining this to people, and don't just be dropping these metaphors on people and they lost. Like, what? I don't even like ribs. What are you talking about?
Right.
I don't. What is goalpost? What sport are we talking? Right. So making sure that you are clearly communicating
Absolutely.
whatever those boundaries are. But I love that you said no matter what space you're in, your boundaries go with you. That's real. Ebony, what you got for me? Social media and these boundaries.
Listen, quick. I'm gonna keep it quick. Thing number one, we want to remember that social media is curated. And so what you see is not always what you get. Right? So the curation of social media, the highlight reel mentality. I'm only going to show you the specific things I want you to see, and not any of that ugly, soft, tender underbelly, right? Thing number two, be careful of trending phrases, right? So narcissism, neurodivergence, a culturedness, and a lifestyle of everybody not a narcissist, beloved. They're just not. They're just not. Just because they like things their way does not mean that they're a narcissist, right? Just because they can't take accountability, that does not mean that they're not. So we have to be very careful of trending words and self-diagnosis on social media. And number three, and probably one of my favorites, is to consider the source. Just because I say I'm Dr. So-and-so, just because I say I'm a life coach, just because I say I'm Reverend Doctor, just because I mean to be apostle, does not mean that's who I am.
Correct.
Sometimes you got to fact check some of these people and look for their credentials and their names on a website where they list your credential with your name. Okay, so we want to consider the source. We want to be sure of not taking trending diagnosis, and we also want to consider the curated nature of social media. And that's all I have.
I love that. I love all of that.
Yeah. All of that. It'll bless you if you let it.
It'll bless you now, because you can actually go and look folks up at your Secretary of State. And see if they have a license.
Yes, see if they have a license. And just because you passed the coursework don't mean you registered.
Come on now.
Okay, but that's another story. We can talk about that later.
I mean, you passed the bar exam.
That right there. And you'll see people use different terminology for things, because some things can only be used if you have a license.
That's right.
So you know, everybody that's telling you they're a coach, does not mean they have the credentials or the knowledge and the wisdom to be able to guide you in healthy ways. So the fact checking for me.
You gotta fact check it. You gotta do that.
So we're out of time. We knew that when we had this conversation, we were going to be trying to pack a lot in here at
That's
one
it.
time, but we do encourage you, whatever your boundaries are, to be consistent with them, ensure that they are well articulated, ensure
Yes.
that you are getting information from reliable and credible sources, and
Yes.
making sure those boundaries go in every space that you go in, and that
right.
they're not being adjusted because you're in a different space.
That's
All right.
right.
So we want to thank you all again for this opportunity to serve as your co-host. We appreciate you. And do we want to drop our contact information in this? How do we?
Why not?
Okay, all right. So you can reach me at Tea Time with Dr. Tarver. That is literally the letter T, so 2 T's. Tea Time with Dr. Tarver, and I'm on Facebook, YouTube, all your favorite listening platforms. So check me out.
Yes.
Yes, so I'm Ebony Young. You can reach me on Facebook at Ebony Yo. You can reach me on Instagram at Simply Be Honey, where I'll be releasing some new information soon and going to my girls support system to get it up and running. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, and I'm Marylis West, and on Instagram I am Yes West. And also on Instagram at Rafa Creative Groups. You can find me in either place. We are excited that Sybil is taking rest. She's not taking a nap because she refuses to take a nap.
No.
She is taking rest and spending time with her family. And so we are glad to be able to step into the space, and the great girlfriend space, and just share some time with you guys. So we hope to talk to you soon.
Yes.
Bye.
All right, great girlfriends. Did you enjoy this week's episode of the podcast? If so, would you please give us your amazing review on iTunes? Every single review helps another great girlfriend get plugged into the podcast and the community. Speaking of community, make sure you join our Facebook group at The Great Girlfriends. Follow us on Instagram at The Great Girlfriends and on Twitter at _great GFS. I'm Sybil Amuti, and I'm out.